Hey everybody, it's Joe, the 3D printing professor, though today I think I'm going to be the 3D printing doctor because this file needs a little bit of work before it can be 3D printed. Now I received this file on my Discord at discord.3dpprofessor.com from a user named Magneter, something like that. And they were having a problem in particular with the ridges on the front of this tank model. It looks like they want to do some wargaming and they want to 3D print it. But when they 3D printed it, these ridges kind of smoothed out. They didn't work very well. And we're going to investigate that and see if we can fix it. Now, in the state that I got this model, it looks like they've already done some work. They've added a bunch of cubes here. And if we select on the body and go into the modifier tab, it looks like they've already tried Booleaning out at least one of them. Now, I think that what happened was they Booleaned out a bunch of them and applied that modifier. And I'm getting it in a post messed with it a little bit state, but we're going to see if we can't fix that. So to begin with, we're going to clean this up. I'm just going to select everything. And I also noticed that we still have the camera object and the light object in this scene that we don't need. So I'm going to select everything. And then I'm going to hold down Shift while I select the tank body. And then select it again to deselect it so that the only thing that I have selected now is everything but the tank body. I'm going to hit X to delete it. And now all I have left is the tank body. And if we look in the outliner, we can see we've got a collection with just the tank body. I'm going to rename this collection Tank. This is now the Tanks collection. There's going to be nothing in this collection but tank. And we'll see why that's important later. But select the body, go into edit mode with the tab key. And let's start taking a look at it. So the first thing I want to check is how big these ridges are. So I'm going to go to edge select mode by hitting the 2 key. I'm going to select the depth on one of these edges, and then I'm going to select across the length of one of these edges, and I'm going to turn on edge length in the view options here. Is that view options? Is that what we're looking at here? Yeah, overlays. All right, so we've overlaid the depth, and we can see that this ridge is 0.16 millimeters deep and 0.12 millimeters wide. Now here's the thing. If you're 3D printing with resin is a liquid. And while resin is possible, it's possible in resin to get details at this level, you're making a cavity. And the thing about liquid is it likes to flow into cavities. That's the way that old pens used to work. They would take a feather, and later on they'd make these out of metal, but they'd make a little slit in the feather, and they'd make that slit just wide enough that when you dipped it into the inkwell, the ink would climb up inside of that gap and fill it in. There's a name for this, and I should look it up, but I can't remember what it is. But we're just going to call it like liquid suck, and it would suck up into that gap and fill it in. So with the gaps that we're seeing in this 3D print, let's go back to that. It's possible that the liquid resin is sucking into those holes, and without aggressive cleaning with the alcohol before you cure it a second time, that the liquid just does not want to get out of those holes. You would have to really aggressively clean that, possibly even with a toothbrush or something, to get the alcohol down into there to clean out that resin. But there's a second problem that you might have noticed when I was looking at these edges. I'm going to deselect none and turn off the edge length overlay. But do you notice something weird going on with these portions up here? Do you see how we can kind of see underneath them? I'm going to select all the faces on the top here. And really quickly, I'm going to change my transform orientation to normal so that when I hit GZ, it'll move that up according to that plane. But notice how we can see underneath. This has no walls on the side of it. This makes me think one of two things has happened. Option number one, this 3D model was not made for 3D printing. Likely. It might have been a video game asset. And video game assets on the screen, little mistakes like this won't show up. But in 3D printing, it's like, I don't know if this is an outside wall or an inside wall. I need volume in order to work. So The 3D print might not even print this. I'm going to put that back. There's also possibly other problems here. I'm seeing overlapping geometry. And so, yeah, when the Boolean modifier tries to cut through overlapping geometry, that's a problem. Let's investigate that. I'm going to go into vertex select mode, and I'm going to click, hold my mouse over one of the points and hit L to select all the points that are linked to it. And look at that. That's not the whole model. Let's change it back to global transform orientation. That's just one part of the model. And if I hit link on this, yeah, that's another part. And what about this? Oh my goodness, this entire model is a bunch of little parts all put together. So undo back to that's where we want it. So one of the things that we're going to want to do is to break this model into separate parts. But before we do that, I want to clean up this non-manifold problem that we found. So let's do that first. Select nothing, edge select mode by hitting 2, and then go select by trait, non-manifold. Now you'll notice that I already have a hotkey for this because I use it a lot. Control-Alt-Shift-M is my hotkey for it, but let's select that, and oh my goodness, what am I seeing here? Let's go to wireframe mode. There is non-manifold geometry all over this thing. So if these problems were caused by applying the Boolean modifier ahead of time, which I'm just going to take that off right now, take that out of the modifiers panel. We don't need that right now. But if this was caused by that, this wasn't. This model came in with bad non-manifold geometry. Again, I think it was a video game asset. We're going to try to clean this up, but I want you to keep in mind, this cleanup is dirty. We are going to use a suture where we should probably do reconstructive surgery, but this is going to be quick and dirty. So with these non-manifold edges selected, we're going to assume that these are all holes in the geometry, and we can just clean them up by hitting F to create new faces. I'm going to select nothing. I'm going to reselect non-manifold. It looks like the only ones we have left are these up here. I'm going to try it again, F to fill those in, and select nothing and select manifold, non-manifold. It looks like we have a few little non-manifold problems in the front here, but I'm going to assume that that's good enough. So we've cleaned it up mostly, and we'll see how that plays out later. Now we need to take this and separate it into its distinct parts, and that's real easy. You just hit P to separate, and separate by loose parts. And notice now in the outliner view we have the base hole, which I don't even know which part that is, and then we got hole 0.001, 002, all the way down to 00041. We have 42 distinct parts that this is broken into. I'm going to hit Tab to exit edit mode. What's going on? I accidentally hit play. I fat fingered the play button on my computer. I should really take that off. I don't even need animation for most of what I do. But here we go. Let's select. There we go. We've got that part. We got that part. We got that part. We got that part. This thing is just a bunch of discrete parts, but that's all right. Now that it's separated, we'll be able to work with things a little bit better. Now I'm going to go back to those ridges in the front, and notice now they're really smoothed out. What the heck is happening? Well, I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to, if I go to face select and select one of these areas that we filled in between, you'll notice that from this angle it looks okay, but this one doesn't. This one's smoothed out that way. What's going on? Well, what's going on is that we created a face that goes every which way, that bends around corners. And the problem with that is that Blender doesn't know. It will let you make an n-gon that goes around a corner. It doesn't care, but it doesn't know whether the points are supposed to be convex or concave or whatever. And in this case, it decided to make them concave, and in this case, it made them convex. We need to clean this up so that Blender knows which way it needs to go. So the way that we're going to do that is by turning this face with, just a bunch of edges that go all the way around, and we're going to cut it up into smaller faces. So I'm going to go to vertex select mode by pressing 1. I'm going to select the vertex on one edge of this corner and shift select the vertex on the other edge of this corner and hit J to join them. And now it has been broken up into a face over here and a face over here, but we still need to do the same over here. So edge select that and that, hit J, and now it's perfect. It knows exactly what it's going to do. And I need to do that for all of these edges. So I'm just going to go into wireframe mode, select J, nope, try that again. Select J. I'm having a hard time finding it. There it is. Select J. And that's what I'm going to do all the way down this, but that's going to take me a little while. So I'm going to pause the video while I continue to work on this. And there I've done it. It took a little bit more work than I would have liked, because there are some parts of this that are just a jumble of vertices all in one small place. And while I really want to clean that all up and just reconstruct this whole thing, we're going to do a quick and dirty fix today, so we're not going to worry about that. However, remember the initial problem was that these ridges were too close together and not deep enough. So we're going to try fixing that real fast. What I'm going to do is select in top view. I'm going to go to edge select mode, and I want edge select mode so that when I box select this group and then hold down shift and box select this group, that they remain separated. If I were doing vertex select mode, it might try selecting across there because I'm selecting vertices, but by selecting edges or faces would have been a good way to do this too, I'm keeping these separate. And this allows me to do something clever. If I hit period, not numpad period, the period on your keyboard, and select individual origins, now make sure that I'm on global transform. If I scale in the X by 2, every one of those individual bodies gets made twice as wide. Now, as for making it deeper, could I do that? Let me think about it. I could, but I don't want to, because what it would involve is selecting, well, actually, if I go back to where I've got all of those selected, nope, I can't do it. I'd have to deselect these guys along the edge here. Yeah, because this is such a mess of geometry, I really don't want to do this. I feel like I'm going to be running into problems if I do this. Let's go back to face select mode. Yeah, and I didn't even select that one there and that one there. Oh, it's a mess. But what I could potentially do, if I could get just the faces in the bottom selected here, I could go back to normal. I could hit GZ and they would go deeper. But the problem is, this is such a mess of overlapping geometry that it kind of prevents me from doing that. So at this point, I don't think we can go deeper with these. But if we take this out of local view, we do have it wider. And we could do the same thing here. We could grab these ones and widen each one of them out. And hopefully that would be enough to fix this problem. So at this point, let's pretend that we fixed it up. We've got it the way that we want. Everything is lined up properly and widened, but it's still a bunch of separate, distinct bodies. We need to turn them into one body, and the way that we're going to do that, in the outliner view over here, I'm going to collapse the tank. I'm going to select the scene selection, so we're one level up, and I'm going to add a mesh single vertice object origin. Now, if you don't have single vertice as an option, go into the properties menu, go into the plugins, find the single vertice plugin and activate it, because this is super useful. This object origin only creates a new object that it calls a vert, but it doesn't have a vert. There's nothing in this object. If I take it into local view, it's blank. There's nothing. I can't select anything. It's blank. Take it out of local view. This is a ghost object. This object exists but has no geometry to it. But this is a useful thing to have. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to rename it tank, but you know, if you know a better name for what this tank is, you can rename it whatever you want. And then we're going to add a modifier on our ghost object. It's going to be a Boolean modifier. It's going to union the entire collection of tank together and nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? Because when you create a single vertice object, it automatically puts you in edit mode. So we need to exit edit mode. So when I hit tab to exit edit mode, now that Boolean modifier is going to take all those different tank objects and smoosh them into one and hopefully clean up all the internal geometry. However, this operation is going to take my computer just a second to do, and if your computer is slower, now's a good time to go to a bathroom break or get a cup of water. It's always good to stay hydrated. So I'm going to pause this video while Boolean works on this one, and we'll come back when it's done. Went and took my own advice there. All right, it's all done. It's put it all together. Now, you might notice, looking at the view here, that this model looks a little bit weird. It's kind of jigging around. That's because we have two tanks over top of each other. The Boolean modifier isn't destructive. The old tank, all the objects that make up the tank are still there, but we now have a new unified tank object that hopefully has cleaned all that geometry up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tank collection with all of those objects in it, and I'm going to hide it. And now all we have is the unified tank object right here. And if we go into wireframe mode, we'll be able to see that, there's a lot of extra geometry on here, but it looks like all those overlapping objects have been merged into one. Go back to solid view. Looks like we got the wider armor plates here that we were looking for. This is the model that we were looking for. So with that tank object selected, go to File, Export, STL, make sure you select selection only, give it a name, and export that tank, and then try 3D printing that. Well, I hope that has helped you, and I hope that exploring how I was able to fix up this tank for 3D printing has helped you in your journey in designing objects for 3D printing or modifying other objects for 3D printing, and shown you just how powerful Blender is for doing that. But I want to thank you very much for watching and remind you, you are a child of God, so you're special to me. So take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else too. I'll see you next time.